talking the secure infrastructure and IaaS of the future that would underpin all of this that we've been talking about today. And today on our panel, we're delighted to welcome David Samara, Senior Lead B2B SaaS Consulting Teams, RSI Security, Aaron Williams, Cybersecurity ASE for State of California, Oregon, Washington at AT&T, Mike Dowdy, Customer Success Manager at NFINIT, and then hopefully very soon we'll have Jeremy Giacosa from Exagen. Now, if I could just get Aaron to start your video or join the panel. What a day so far. I'm sort of blown away by Matt's energy from the last presentation. I was thinking, oh dear, how am I going to even sound halfway credible? But we've got some fans in the audience already. Right. We're talking about what could possibly underpin all of this. All the day we've been talking about how to improve the MSS, MSP, and customer relationship. Right? We've been looking under different rocks. We said, is it because the technical specialist needs some business skills? Is it because the MSP just needs to bundle just one extra thing and everything will go away? But what if we look at it from infrastructure, anything that's underlying it? And I know IaaS is very broad and infrastructure is a very broad term. Let me start with you, Aaron. I'll work my way around. How has managed service infrastructure evolved recently over the last 2 years? Because we keep on hearing about, oh, nothing really changed, or I was set up for home working and I wasn't. But what about what's under the hood? What underpins it?
Well, I think the big one, it's very fast paced, right? So everybody's adjusting as quickly as they can. And with that, and this is through our discussions earlier, it's like it requires a certain type of skill set to be relevant, right? So from an MSSP perspective, as long as your talent or the people that you have working for you is going to be able to meet those demands and the challenges of each one of those different services and platforms, you're going to be okay. But nonetheless, organizations, they're challenged with finding the talent or the people that can actually have these skill sets to keep up. So I definitely agree with our previous speaker that the biggest challenge that we have, it's like, if you're going to be able to keep up, it's like our challenges are going to be on the knowledge of people being able to be very transparent and to work with leadership to put in outline a roadmap that's going to make sense for them. So for me, infrastructure, it's like different organizations are going to invest differently, and we've seen a lot of nice APIs come out in the last 2 years, but APIs are not going to solve your problem. And there's not one single service provider out there that's going to solve all the problems. So it's just being honest and assessing, what stage you're at and what you can do, and be able to, move forward. Okay,
being honest, and I suppose infrastructure should tell the tale of honesty quicker than SaaS. Hopefully, I don't know.
You would hope.
But Mike, welcome. I know you used to work in the data center space before. Are you still working with data centers?
Yeah, I'm with LightEdge. I'm definitely in the data center space, and over at LightEdge, we're HIPAA compliant, high-tech compliant. It's one of the reasons why I made the move. Is it's a far more compliant environment, and we're high-tech environment. But like on the infrastructure side, I think the one conversation no one's talking about is who's making the infrastructure. For example, we don't allow Huawei firewalls into data centers, really? Because everyone at UCSD, if you go over to the computer science department, are Chinese students from China writing the code. So I think there's a lot that we won't talk about, like who is actually writing the code on the infrastructure, and why are some vendors allowed into the data center like Cisco, and vendors like Huawei are not. And I think what we can do on our side, on the compliance side with infrastructure, is not just to have the audits and the compliance guidelines, but dig a little deeper and see who is writing the code, on these devices that are coming into the data center. I think that's the next step that we need to take.
Okay, now that's important, and hopefully things like CMMC signal that people are waking up to things, quote unquote, that maybe they haven't been paying attention to for some reason. But anyway, we'll get into that. David, welcome. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your background and I guess your perspective on infrastructure evolution?
Thanks very much for the intro. Yeah, I think that, I was a CIO in a parallel industry, 5,000 person global organization with several business units. And I got to that level and realized you can have the best equipment in the world out there. But if it gets hacked, if it gets attacked, if it gets compromised, then it's not going to do you any good. So I moved over to the cybersecurity side, and along the way, though, I had the opportunity to install advanced systems, to install some private on-prem cloud systems. It all goes back to, and I think that Aaron and Mike are both talking to this, and so did Matt previously. It all goes back to the business. What is the business doing? What are the business processes? What are the revenue drivers? How do you protect intellectual capital? How do you protect revenue streams? And then once you do that analysis of the business, which a CISO ought to begin with, or some director of cybersecurity, then you can determine what are the people, the process, and the technology pieces that are needed to protect the intellectual property, to preserve the revenue streams. And then you can get down into, okay, technically we need X, Y, and Z. But those have to be filtered through some processes that make sure that configurations stay updated, for instance. But then the people, as Mike talked to, the people who's let into a data center or not. Do you have a good security process to vet people that are being let into a center? But are the people doing the vetting, do they have the right security training to enable them to do that correct vetting process, so that the right people, the appropriate people, get to the keyboard to write the code, and those who shouldn't be there don't get to that keyboard. So I like to operate from that larger process of what does the business need, and then select the right technology and select the right features within the technology to support X, Y, or Z. And each company is going to be different. In fact, you can have two companies that might be in the same industry and might do the same thing with a very similar group of clients, but their operations processes might be a little bit different. One might be more entrepreneurial focused. One might be more, let's say, project management waterfall focused, very ABC 1, 2, 3, and we don't go backwards or forwards, and there's no flexibility. And each one of those might have very different processes that then drive the configuration of technology that then determine how that organization is going to operate.
I like that, because then we're sort of priority led rather than the latest and greatest, which I think is always important. Aaron, then thinking about what the client might want, and thinking of some of the buzzwords coming out, I wonder, we'll get onto like chasm and stuff like that, but confidential compute seemed to be the latest thing in the data center world, which is, I'll have your data, but I can't read it. What do you think of some of these buzzwords?
Well, yeah, and the first thing is it's all the delineation, right? Right. So how data is data, and anywhere there's going to be a touch point, whatever system or platform you put in place to deal with that data at that stage has to be able to accommodate, the policies that you've put forward. So it's kind of going back to not every organization is the same, not all workflows are the same. So it's really important to say, how is that data being handled, and who's accessing, we all know about accessing the data and what they're doing with the data. So if you want to have huge, you want to track as much as that to what's taking place, that's one thing. But, kind of just reversing it back and saying look, any asset that's going to be, connected to your and I say, I use the term assets, like knowing like what's on your network at any given time, and does it have, is it being, its posture is being, somehow challenged at some stage. That's the first step. And then the second step is like going, okay, now that it's there, who's going, who is it that's, possibly making requests and stuff. So, just to kind of back up, my philosophy, this is me personally, just looking at, like every agency is going to deal with things in their own, defined capabilities. And I'm hate, again, it kind of keeps coming back to this point where it's like going, have they defined their policies? Have they decided to say, hey, these are the workflows that we want? And if we're going to adopt kind of a new methodology, so whether it's for consolidation, flexibility, and so forth, have they really taken the time to, do the proper, planning and inspection of that before they implement something that's going to, it's going to end up impacting, most likely, mostly internally, and then maybe externally of who they're going to affect. So I try to advise upon those kind of terms. And it's like, let's take a step and say, do you have an effective plan that can be executable? Can it be implemented? And then if it can be implemented, the next stage is it operational? And then we deal with all the fun stuff, like, okay, now we can get metrics. We can sit there and see how well it's actually, how effective it really is. And so that's kind of like, at least that's the approach that I've been taking for like the last, couple of years with most of our clients. Because when they come at us, I'm like, we just need a vulnerability scan. We just need to have this, or we need to meet this certain type of compliance. It's like going, you're just putting Band-Aids on the real issue. Let's kind of help you step back. And there's a lot of agencies, especially counties here in the California region, that have really started to realign their approach, as well as their how they're going and how they're executing, which is good. It's a positive experience. The last 5 years, it's been hard to get that, the mind share to back up to say like this impacts everybody, regardless, because it's all about data.
And I guess that means if you touch it, then you're responsible. Or you touch it, you drop it, you break it.
Essentially, no, and most of the time they don't. They have no, oh my God, yeah. So if it's going to touch one of your platforms and go through at whatever stage, that delineation, it's like, and yes, you should be. You're going to have there should be some liability that comes into that, or responsibility.
Well then, Mike, can you shine a light on in the world of data centers about what they're doing to increase security? We mentioned confidential compute, which is maybe the buzzword at the moment, but I quite like it. Aside from more armed guards and maybe smaller than 1 centimeter gauze for the cages, or what should we be aware of that's coming out of the world of data centers?
You never have enough armed guards. No, that's just a sales pitch. You get the guy spends all night chasing skateboarders with the gun outside. All kidding aside, what I'm seeing now, because there's here in California at the CCPA and the data privacy laws, I'm seeing where people can only have access via metadata, which is really important. Because you've got a $15 an hour employee working as like a knock tech right out of the high school. Do you really want him to have access to a hard drive that's not encrypted? So what a lot of people are doing now is, if you've got critical data on there, like consumer data for CCPA reporting, you only have access to the metadata. So if I take that hard drive out, I can't do anything else. These are obviously set up in SAN configurations and so forth. But I've seen a lot of cool technology about not giving full access to the data, only access to the metadata or portions of the database. So you're missing a full table, even if someone's able to access your server, even if someone takes the physical hardware. And I see that's where we're going to have data is going to be dispersed more, so you can't have the centralized data. I think that's going to be the next thing on both on the privacy side and on the security side, where you don't have centralized data.
Which is what some of the quantum people are talking about, but I'm not going to go any
Yes.
further because I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know enough. David, then how do we then interrogate or assess all this IaaS effectively if we ourselves are not IaaS specialists?
Well, I'm glad you brought up that assessment piece. I'm in an organization that does assessments and audits and even advisories on the lighter end. And we ask these very questions that Mike has talked to. You know, how do you handle your data? What do you? We do specific CCPA assessments, just CCPA. Then we also do NIST 800-171. But along the way, there's a privacy portion that that can be a part of that, or even 800-53 if you're going to do one of those. There's a privacy portion there. And we ask those questions like, you know, how is your data accessed? Who has access to the data? In the payment card industry world, PCI, that's very important. There's PAN data, you know, the specific type of data. And is it encrypted on your hard drive? Do you retain it at all? When it goes on to another party, do they decrypt it? And when you get, you know, another version of that data back, then, you know, what can you see or not see? See the last 4 digits or not, or only the last 4 digits? So that is very important, and it's certainly a critical question when it comes to a variety of assessments, not just CCPA, but also other types of assessments as well. And I like the fact that Aaron brought up the Band-Aid approach. And, you know, as Mike is speaking to as well, it's very easy to look at a very tiny, very specific piece of technology. What are you, you know, is the data decentralized or not? Is it just metadata, or is it something else? Is it, you know, we just need scans? But if you back up from that, you look at the larger strategy of the organization, the security strategy. Security and compliance, I believe, are two different things. And security is a posturing. How do you posture the organization at large, back to the people, process, and technology? And I see that Mike and Aaron are agreeing. And then compliance gets very detailed. What does this particular regulatory agency in this particular industry require you to have these specific checks in the blocks? That's important too. And those compliance pieces, plus many other pieces, all work together to create a security posture for any organization, which is made up of the very specific and driven by the very specific details we're talking about here. Typically, the regulatory environment drives the security details. Not every organization has the same technology, but they might have tools within the technology to enable encryption over here, hashtagging over there, that meets a particular security standard. And then those pieces of compliance work together to help shape larger security posture.
And and that larger security posture is then even larger because it's where all these MSPs and MSS players are keeping their items.
Right.
And I can imagine if I'm a small MSP starting up, I see, I mean, I saw even on a tweet earlier today, you know, 30% off such and such racks and this, you know, uptime. And I'm like, yeah, fine. But the last thing maybe I, as a really small MSP, might think is security. I mean, I should, but they're not advertising it.
You know, business is about making money. It's not about being secure and then making money. It's about making money. So let's admit that. But you are going to develop intellectual property along the way. You're going to develop revenue along the way. You certainly want to protect that. You don't want to just put it out there on the street corner and say, look at all the revenue I got today. And here, anybody can have that. You want to put it electronically in systems that are secure. So you have to have, in this day and age with the threat that is much more pervasive than at any other time and will get more pervasive, i.e. we're shifting over to quantum cryptography somewhere here soon in the near term. With the increase in the threat, it behooves any business, even a small business, to contract some amount of security or hire in-house some amount of security to protect what they are going to develop, not only the revenue they've got right now, the intellectual property that will allow them to gain revenue in the future.
And so with that responsibility, Aaron, how is an MSP to know? I mean, MSPs have hard enough time looking under the hood of their SaaS products. So how are they going to look under the hood in their cloud thing? And someone a couple of years ago said that instead of EDR, XDR, MDR, there's a new one, CDR, Cloud Detection and Response. And CDR would allow you to navigate the entire cloud and sniff out stuff. Now, I could imagine as a data center, I could probably find a use for it. But as a customer, no one's going to let me do that, are they? I mean, how do you do your due diligence?
It comes down through, so you're almost going to have to, I don't use the term too often, but you're going to have to augment your security operations, or at least the platforms are going to be able to be enabled to access, those different types of cloud providers to get the intelligence that's coming out of it, whether you call it event data or whatever it's going to be, right? So those platforms, the ones that have taken the steps to say, listen, not only have we built maybe say APIs, but we have an ongoing, and this is another thing that Matt brought up. It's like, this stuff does not, you just don't set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way in security. You're going to have to be very proactive, and you're going to have to partner with with other entities, because trying to do it in-house is impossible. That's why this is where the value of an MSSP comes into play. There's the affordability portion of it. Secondly, there's going to be the talent pool that's out there. It's their exposure and their ability to do the response. That was the other thing Matt hit on. If you can't respond and recover in a timely manner, you're dead. You don't have a future. I don't care which organization you're from. It's like your business is going to be requiring you to be able to respond, get results, and then make sure that you can recover quickly. If you can't demonstrate that, then and again, with the hybrid models that we face today, it's like going, it's all about getting that intelligence back and in a meaningful way. So that's I think the platforms, if the ones that have matured and been able to integrate really effectively and quickly and make it simple, or they offer the ability for the MSSP to make those connections really quick, is going to be, because once you make the connections, one thing. Secondly, is you got to have the person's got to analyze it and then operationalize it. So implementation is just the middle step, and then you have the operational piece of it.
And Dan Chemistruck helps us out with our acronyms. He says he believes CDR is more commonly reserved for content disarm and reconstruction. Cloud detection and response is typically a combination of cloud security posture management and CASB. So very good, yeah. A similar problem does arise when you want to look under the hood, and Amazon will not let you because,
Yeah, that attack surface is it's tough. I mean, when you're looking at your assets, it's important to be able to identify when they connect to your environment and, what's going to be their posture as far as you think about XDR, EDR, or even, the certain SIM platforms and stuff. The next level is to be able to sit there and take it to, so that they can effectively, and I use that term very poignantly, is that they can effectively allow you to actually do a response in a meaningful time frame. But that does require some work. Your system has to go through the process, and this is where MSSPs again come in play. They're going to, you don't take the guy that's doing your telephony and everything, and now he's in charge of this SIM platform, and all of a sudden he's got to, get everything. Yeah, he's got everything connected, but he doesn't know what to do it's constant fine tuning. It's constant refinement. So you have to have somebody that's proactively, not just looking for the attacks, but also tweaking your system for your environments. Because, nobody's environment's the same. So similar, but not the same.
Okay. All right. Similar, not the same. So in a similar way, Mike, what about another buzzword, chasm, which it should be the ultimate visibility enabler, cyber attack as. So I have to read this off the page. Cyber asset attack surface management. What hope do we have?
I don't know enough about to give you an intelligent answer. I have a hard time running a sim. It's great in theory, but then when I go to use it, like, what is this? And I like how they have the arrows going over from Russia and China over to our data center with no explanation. I mean, I feel like I'm playing a video game.
Oh, well, don't forget that a very high profile British company used a very high profile American video games company to do that interface.
Well, they did. Whoever did the interface did a great job. It scares the hell out of me, but I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I have work with a lot of really smart young people. And the more we use the Sims and the other tools, the more we realize that we don't know what any of this means. So I wish I can give you an intelligent answer, but we've been outsourcing people. There's several sim companies that we've worked with. And once you lift the hood, the more you realize, like, oh shit, no one knows what the hell this stuff is going on. And there's things that are just, I hate to say this, but like we have to look at the whole TCP IP stack. Like there's now UDP attacks and they just come out of nowhere. And how do you defend myself against that? Because it's just out of nowhere. So what I've been doing is just trying to isolate workloads and processes. So kind of a very defensive approach. It's just, hey, if this arm goes off, I still got this other arm over here that can follow the task. There's a lot of marketing tools out there. And I call them marketing tools. When I go to the engineers, they're like, what is this? It's like, oh, this is something we should buy. It costs $50,000. And God bless them, they just like bring reality to the table. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but I haven't seen one tool out there that just doesn't look like a video game that actually solves a real problem. We have to have people, we have to hire professionals. That's why I like the managed services community can come in here and say, hey guys, what do you think about this? And get some real answers. And I think Aaron said earlier, like everyone's asking, they want to scan. Hey, can you do a security scan so I can pass this audit? That's the challenge I face every day when that's not reality. I mean, what's true today is not true tomorrow. And we have to have professionals manage the infrastructure every day.
Yeah, and the spooky insurance example that Matt gave before about travelers trying to say, no, I know I gave you $3 million for your breach that I agreed it was all good. I want the money back, right? That's the next real issue. I can see. Anyway, I don't know. David, where do you think maybe this debate should go, in a year's time?
That depends upon the threat. It depends upon how the threat develops. We saw ransomware show up just in the last few years. We've seen it take 2 or 3 different forms. It'll be interesting to see where the criminal element goes next. What's the next threat that they're going to develop? We might have a successor to ransomware in a year that we're talking about that we don't even know the name of today. Or maybe some people in some very close circles might be looking at it for the first time. And so as Mike was talking to, as Aaron was talking to, you have to have a good incident response plan. It should be quick, or parts of it should be quick. It depends on the situation a little bit, but that's driven by threat intel. What threat intel are you getting? And then, as Mike talked to, and Aaron as well, a SIM begins to bring you that intelligence to let you know what's going on in your network. Threat intelligence tends to come from outside and be more industry or criminal element based at large, what's going on from a macro perspective. But to have a SIM is at least one tool that you can put that together with threat intelligence you might receive from an outside vendor. But they're both right in that the SIM is a specific tool, needs to be well configured to begin with, needs to be shaped towards your compliance environment, towards what you want to see, what you want to protect. It needs to be managed either internally or externally. It needs to be a constant. People need to be trained on it. And as Mike said, you need to know why. Yeah, it looks cool, and it may only be 50K, but does it benefit the business? Is it what your business needs, or do you need to get something now, maybe not a SIM, and wait until the chasm industry or sub-industry develops? Which that's as I was reading about it, chasm is SIM and a couple other tools all rolled together. That's even going to be a larger application that's going to need even further refining, further smart configuration, in order to, again, support what's really going on in the business. The technical folks, everything technical folks are doing, we are doing, should all be focused on what does that business need.
And it is a little ominous, isn't it? Chasm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's another Gardner, truism, right?
That's my thought. Is like, I mean, it's all entertaining, but how much of it is factual? And they're really expensive.
Well, it depends. Yeah, right. So if you've already got your operations, you're getting some of that piece. It's being fulfilled already. But yeah, there are certain platforms that focus directly on that. But yeah, any asset that's going to be connecting is, you do want to have some insight, and it's all intelligence gathering, right? And making it effective intelligence gathering.
Good. Well, we're over time, and intelligence actually links to our next session, which is good. Thanks for doing that.
Nice segue.
So yes, David, Mike, and Aaron, thanks for being such great panelists. I will put you back in the audience. Nice to see you all, and I hope to see you in person in a little bit as well. You should all come to London. The exchange rate is great for you.
No problem. Thank you, pal.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Take care.